It's that time once again. It's average time. Average Sports with your average guys. Eric, my buddy, on the other line, and myself, Ty. Hope you guys are doing well. Thanks for tuning in. What's up, Eric?
Not much, man. Just another week.
That's
another
right.
week is in the books. I am excited for this show.
NFL's been going on.
There,
NCAA, of course, in full swing. We'll talk a little bit about that. And we're going to answer some questions from a few listeners out there about fantasy. But first off, what are we not talking about in this episode?
Dude, Le'Veon Bell still hasn't shown up to practice.
Absolutely.
We're into week 3.
Over it. Don't care. We're moving on. So how about
Next.
a week recap? Buddy, last episode we talked about my pick, the Browns winning week 1 against the Steelers. How close was that pick? I mean, I was almost on it. I was that close.
Oh, man. Yeah, if they had a kicker that could actually make a field goal,
Well,
they would be 2-0 right now.
but they didn't lose.
But they didn't lose. Well, in fairness, that should count as a win for the Browns and should definitely count as a loss for the Steelers.
Absolutely. In just over a season and a half, when was the last time they actually won a game or didn't lose a game? I like just saying didn't lose. And that's kind of that's the way you got to put it.
It's been a long time since that. I don't have that exact number.
I will say though that does so
more
far
than 4 years.
So far they're 0-1-1 by the time we did this episode, and you are not anywhere closer to your 4 wins this season, my friend. So, I know we got 12 weeks left, but just saying, we got that bet on the side. What else happened this week?
We do got the side bet. I'm not worried about it. It's fine. They'll figure it out. Otherwise, I should really be there 2-0. But that's okay. We'll figure it out.
Should be.
Okay. So one of the games that I watched was that Georgia Tech University of South Florida game. Now this was still a couple weeks ago, but it was just a game that really stuck out to me. It was a complete back and forth game. You went to one of these schools. Did you get a chance to watch your South Florida Bulls do some damage against Georgia Tech?
Yeah, you were telling me about this game. I actually tuned in some and actually seen that score. You're not wrong. I mean, that is one of the most entertaining kind of games you could hope for in all of sports, where it's a back and forth between two teams that, as you would say, they're competing. Those two teams
They're competing, man.
Yeah.
It was competitive.
Yeah, absolutely.
This is a little more than competitive. I mean, they had 9 lead changes throughout that entire game. And Terrence Horn went off. He had over 2 returns for touchdowns, 2 kickoff returns. Also had a receiving touchdown. Did amazing. It was awesome.
You know who else is going off right now is Tampa Bay Buccaneers. What's the deal?
Magic.
Is that one word
That's
or
what
2
it is,
words?
man. It's one.
Okay.
It's one word because
it's one
all
player,
about
right?
Fitz
I'll go with
magic.
It's unreal what Tampa Bay has done in the first 2 weeks of the NFL season. It's not sustainable, though, right?
I don't think so. I mean, we've seen Ryan Fitzpatrick do this before. In the past, where he has really good starts to the season, but then just kind of fizzles out. However, the last time he had a receiving core this good, he did make the playoffs. That was in New York when he had Eric Decker and Brandon Marshall.
Okay.
When they were, healthy players, healthy, good players, he had those 2, and they made the playoffs that year.
So you're saying
it's
there
not far-fetched
is a chance
to think
yeah.
that, they could do some damage. Now they're in what you and I both agree is the toughest division in the NFC, by far the NFC South. That is a stacked division. And Tampa is way better than we think. However, the downside is Atlanta may be much worse than we think as well too. Now they looked better in week 2 than week 1, but we'll kind of see how that plays out.
Still
but
pretty early, almost too early to tell. At the same time, there's a ton of stats that if you don't win a game in those first 2 weeks, which Atlanta at least split it, so them aside, of any team that if they don't win, their chances of making the playoffs go way down. So that means the Browns, maybe they still have a chance. They didn't lose 2, so they could still be a playoff hopeful. But the biggest surprise of the season thus far got to be the Tampa Bay Bucks. It's crazy what they
got to be the Bucks,
but it was
there's
soft
just one
defense.
question: when Jameis Winston comes back from that suspension,
what
are they going to do? Ryan Fitzpatrick has put up huge numbers, touchdowns. He's won them 2 games. is Tampa going to go with the guy that they spent a ton of money on and Jameis Winston, or are they going to ride Ryan Fitzpatrick until he cools off and then maybe think about changing things up?
Absolutely. You ride the hot hand.
We've seen this before, that,
Sure.
that coaches just make the wrong decisions, because they have quote unquote money and draft picks and all this stuff invested in a player, that's who then gets the nod.
Well,
So-
I would be really surprised if Winston just comes back and says, and they say, suit up and you're starting. He's going to be the backup for sure. I would be.
He should be.
Well, I mean, for what Fitzpatrick has done, yeah, it doesn't make any sense to me why anyone would make that justification, even if there's money involved, as you put it. I feel like Jameis kind of put himself in this situation. You make your bed, you got to lie in it, and Fitzpatrick is stepping up. That's where your appreciation's got to go, I feel like. So I wouldn't think if whether it's fantasy or just as a fan, like you wouldn't worry about Fitz going anywhere once Winston returns. But let's move on to we're going to jump ahead on this one because we're restructuring this episode, getting right into our lightning standings, talking about some NCAA college ball, seeing where we are at with the scores. And the top 25, that's what we're looking at. There have been some good shakeups. Anything after the top 4, I think a lot of usual suspects in there. But our main topic of the show, just to tease a little bit later, are those listener comments on some fantasy questions. So we're going to talk about that here in just a bit. So kicking it off, lightning standings. Eric, you got your polls up?
I got my polls up. We start from the bottom. Now we're going to the top. We're doing it all Drake style.
I say let's just do it real quick on the 4. I'll just announce that. Alabama, Georgia, Clemson, Ohio State. Is anyone surprised? No. All 4 teams sit at 3-0. Now what do you see?
We got Oklahoma, LSU, Stanford, Notre Dame, also all at 3-0, undefeated. We have our first team with a 1 loss there. Auburn at 2-1. Penn State and Washington are both sitting at the 10 spot. You have West Virginia, Virginia Tech, Mississippi State, and Oklahoma State rolling out. Oklahoma State's the big mover there. They're up 9 spots after that decimation of Boise State.
You mentioned another school, though,
too.
that's a good surprise right now. It started, I think, outside of the top 25, if I remember correctly. LSU. They climbed the ladder in the last couple weeks.
Yes, they have. They have been on the move.
So at 16, then you got UCF, TCU at 17, then followed by Wisconsin, still at 2-1, Michigan, also 2-1. You have an undefeated Oregon team. Miami, they did suffer that loss to the team we just talked about with LSU at 21. Texas A&M is hanging in there at 22. Boston College, Michigan State, who've only played 2 games so far, splitting those games at 1-1 and 2-1 with BYU at 25. Anyone really stand out there that you think may not be in the top 25 by the end of the season?
Miami, I think you and I
You got
both
nervous
like
about them,
them,
huh? Yeah.
Quite a bit at the start of the season. And LSU, now that I think about it, I know that LSU was in the top 25. I think they were 23 or 24 when they played against Miami in the season opener. But Miami doesn't look good. They play my school this weekend, Florida National. They should beat them pretty easily, but Miami has shown that that's not always going to be the case with them. I would not be surprised if they fall out.
For me, I think Michigan is. There might be a little too much hype going into them early in the year.
Yeah, that defense is so good, but that offense is bad.
Yeah,
Real
I feel
bad.
like they are the team that may just slip a bit. I mean, maybe top 30 still, but I don't think they're.
I like Michigan. I'm with you though on that one.
All right. Well, let's get into it. We had some questions come in about fantasy. We're going to talk some football here, going back into our topic now for this episode. So we're having some people ask us who to start, who to go with. What do we think?
Yeah, obviously.
Let's
We actually got quite a few questions that were thrown up
like
to us, and we have quite a few, especially going into week 3, that now things have started to somewhat even out, and you're starting to see some trends and some things like that. One of the big things that you never want to see is, especially after week 1, is just that full tilt. That's where you can take advantage of some lesser players out there, and there were plenty in my leagues, and in particular, Ty, the one that you and I are in, there was someone that was on complete full tilt and totally got hosed. on some players that were dropped by that individual. However, some of the questions that we saw come across, and this is a pretty common one, is what do you do with the San Francisco backfield? Alfred Morris or Matt Breida?
I go Breida.
I'm with you there too.
I think he's running pretty well.
Yeah, I thought he played really well. I mean, it's still going to be a timeshare. I mean, you like Alfred Morris, especially in a deep 12 or 14 because he's going to be that goal line guy. But I think Matt has shown that he can definitely be a bit more of a pass catch back, and especially with them being probably going to be having to play from behind because they're just not a dominant team. Matt Breida, I think, is going to be playing a lot more than Alfred Morris. What do we do with, we're sticking with just some players on the same team here. Is kind of what we're going with the start here. Crowell or Powell out of the Jets? Who do you like?
That's a really tough one. I don't know. I go 50-50 on that. Honestly, it's kind of who their opponent is. And if you think if you think the game's going to be tight enough, I feel like Crowell kind of gets a little bit more of the share, but I don't know. What are your thoughts? That one's tough. I'll lean away from that one. I said go to the waiver.
Yeah, it's a tough one right there. I think I would like, in most senses, especially in PPR, because I think his game script is always going to be better because the Jets aren't a great team, and Powell, I think, is the pass catching back there, and he's not getting as much play, but he is able to be a lot more efficient with the fact that he's actually
he's got that higher ceiling though, right? Powell can catch a ball and then he's off for 60 yards and all of a sudden you got a 7-point play if it was PPR, and that's what you go for. But he's got a real low floor, I feel like, too. So real boom or bust. Mm-hmm. How about Doyle or Ebron? Talking about some tight ends, huh?
Yeah, moving on to some tight ends. Ebron obviously had a really good week this week if you played him or if you started him or even looked at him.
But not going to happen every week.
Not going to happen every week. And my issue with Eric Ebron is he has never really shown it in the NFL, one. But two, he's only playing about 20 to 25% of the snaps. That is just not good enough for me. If you are banking on the fact that Eric Ebron is going to be a red zone target week in, week out, that's great. But he's only playing 25% of the snaps. I'm sorry, you got to go with the volume here in Jack Doyle. So let's talk about some other pass catchers. The Washington wideouts. Kirk Cousins no longer there, who really preferred to throw to the tight ends, or not the tight ends, to the wide receivers. Now you have Alex Smith, who is a big tight end guy. It was well known when Alex Smith was in Kansas City that his team went close to a season without a wide receiver catching a touchdown. Like, that's crazy. The trends continue in Washington.
I feel the same way. Like, any of these forget any of them. Go running back. Look for the running backs in Washington. He's going to keep doing the check down thing, and those guys are going to have to starve for any attention. So it's going to be a real risky play on any of those three.
If you're forced to pick one, I like Crowder just because he plays in the slot. But to be honest, there's substantially better options out there, especially at wide receiver, that you can get your hands on. I would almost think about dumping or trying to trade off of them.
I agree. I think all of their value has taken a hit since the QB change. Henry versus Lewis? Who you got there?
I like Lewis. I think Derrick Henry is more than just a complete bust. This guy is going to be force-fed the ball in the first couple of drives, but the second they start to get behind, Deion Lewis is the guy that he's clearly the better running back. He's clearly the better pass catcher, but for some reason, they love force-feeding Derrick Henry in the first couple of drives. It's not there. Deion Lewis is the better player. He's the one that's going to be catching the balls. The game script is typically going to be, I think, in his favor as well, too. I would avoid Henry.
Yeah, I think his numbers prove that as well on Lewis.
Mm-hmm.
And a guy we haven't talked about lately, or all episode, is Josh Gordon. Of course, making big news. If you haven't heard, had some issues with the Browns. Now Cleveland's shipping him off. They traded him to New England, where you have feature players all the time over in that system, except for Gronkowski and Brady, of course. So do you like him? Do you start him? What do you do with him?
I mean, why do teams continue to help the New England Patriots? I feel like all the other teams in the NFL should just be like, no.
Well, they got some high draft picks, and Cleveland loves the draft. That's the best day to be a Browns fan.
They got a fifth rounder for him. That was like, here you go.
Is that all they got? Fifth round?